Ghazali, if you allow me, I can go to the next guest because we have a few minutes. Okay, we have Johnson Cerda. He's a member of the Quechua community of Limon Cocha in the Ecuadorian Amazon. Johnson, I've been to the Quechua people of Sarayaku in the Ecuadorian Amazon, and 7 days without the phone, without internet, without calls, just interacting with Mother Nature. That was extremely powerful. And if you come from these people, I want to hear much more about you. Mr. Cerda, as he studies in law, political science, human rights, and democracy, Mr. Cerda has worked with indigenous organizations and has collaborated with 2 Ecuadorian government institutions working on indigenous issues. He has also worked with 2 non-governmental organizations based in Washington, D.C., co-director of Amazon Alliance and advisor on indigenous issues for Conservation International. Participated as well on UNFCCC negotiations since 2000, advocating for indigenous people's rights, and is currently the director of dedicated grant mechanism for indigenous peoples and local communities. Wow, Ghazali, please.
Yeah, Johnson, welcome, and Carson, thank you so much for leading this in, and also like the segment with Elsa. Johnson, welcome. Hope you're doing okay. Know you primarily through UNFCCC, very active. One of the experts in my view, also like on the bridge of like the indigenous movement side as well as the NGO side. In your view, what role can an international NGO play in the indigenous movement, and what role do you play within it as a Quechua?
Hi, Ghazali, Carson, and panelists. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this invitation. Yes, well, I'm from the Ecuador Amazon. You said that you went to Sarayaku. That is in the center of the Amazon in Ecuador. I live I'm from the north of the Amazon, border with Colombia and Peru. So very close to the big Napo River there. Okay, in relation to your question, Ghazali, about the role of NGOs, I've been working closely with environmental NGOs in most of my time since 2000. And what I see is that we are natural partners because they're interested in conservation. We are also interested, we don't use the word of conservation, but we are doing the same activities. Sometimes we have different views in terms of perhaps the ownership, because NGOs mostly work with the governments and not directly with communities sometimes. And the ownership is an issue, but then, you know, the end goal is the same. And I think with the NGOs, I've seen that they've been using a lot in order to implement their internal policies and work with communities. And I've seen, at least in Conservation International, they have in their own policies, you know, the recognition of the rights of indigenous peoples, and they have, you know, been working on policies like the free priming from consent also for their activities. So that's a great thing and helps a lot in the work, you know, at the ground level with communities. So that is one thing. You know, the other thing is helping bringing those practices from the ground level to the international policy. And I've seen a lot of interest. I remember that like 8 or 9 years ago that we started working with several NGOs in order to support indigenous peoples in the negotiations of climate change. And it was fantastic to see how we can combine the expertise from different NGOs and also expertise from indigenous organizations to put together and help indigenous leaders to, you know, get updated information or to have access to the latest information for the negotiation. So that was really interesting. So that's why I believe that if we can work together with, you know, indigenous movement and NGOs in specific areas from the ground to the policy level. So in terms of my role there, I was invited to work with Conservation International almost 11 years ago. We started working with a group of indigenous advisors. We call it indigenous advisors. And we had people there, you know, inviting them to visit countries like Guyana, we went to Ecuador, we went to Peru, and we visited there the Minister of Environment, Agriculture, the Foreign Affairs ministers, all of them in order to talk about the issues of indigenous peoples. And it was interesting because they were sharing the experiences that they were having in their own country and also learning on what was happening in those countries. So that is the first thing I started doing. And we invited, actually, we had in the group Kaningi from Africa, we had Mina, we had colleagues from Guyana, David James, who's the lawyer in there, he's an indigenous lawyer. We have Paulo Pancanaru and others, others colleagues. And we had that interesting group, and we used to, after a week of conversations with governments and communities, make some recommendations for the country. So that's how we started there. And I facilitated that. And then, I was saying about these 8 years, or more or less, or 9 support to the negotiation. We started with Latin America, and then we made it a little bit global. And it was fantastic, to support that. And I'm happy that being in an international NGO, I've been facilitating this process in order to support, whatever we're trying to achieve at the international level as indigenous movement.
Johnson, if you can, conversation post COVID-19, any positive or challenging experiences in the conversations that are, or discussions that are developing, what is the latest? Can you update us on that, and or what do you want any people to think about based on those conversations?
You mean in terms of the COVID-19?
In terms of, I can imagine, because what we're seeing is that talking about FPIC, self-determination, but project-based things. Is it what are you seeing in those conversations?
Well, in terms of for instance, free prior and informed consent, that is an issue that we've been discussing internally, because since COVID-19, it's among us, and it's difficult to implement the FPIC in the regular basis as we used to implement. And what we've been talking internally is that I think we need to strengthen the capacity of the communities in order to let them to run the process, and not just going from outside, with a consultant to be there to observe, the process of the consultation or the process of the free primary from consent, but, creating new capacities or strengthening the capacity of the communities. That's the one thing to go forward if they want to really move in a project. We've been discussing in something very specific. For instance, there are, I think, interest to implement or to approve projects under the Green Climate Fund, or let's say the GF. They, according to their policies, in order to implement activities in communities, they need to work on the free primary from consent first, with the communities. And the question was, how are we going to do that if we are in the COVID-19? So we have to stop the process or continue the process. That's why the answer was, okay, we need to build the capacity at a local level, because we cannot go there to the communities. So that's something that we've been discussing internally on how to strengthen the communities. But then also, it's not only that, as you know, in the communities, everything is holistic. And what we have seen is also that a lot of things in the communities are happening at this point. For instance, in my own community, I see that they never had any kind of support from the government, and they had COVID. I don't know, perhaps the entire community, but they use only their traditional medicine. And the question is how we are going to empower, what they've been doing as a practice, having the traditional medicine, because nobody passed away in the community, and they've been using local medicine, but the government is not recognizing anything. Just something interesting or funny that happened a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. that, our organization, ConfiniI in Amazon, got like the tests, the PCR tests, like 40 tests for my community. So they went to collect that, they went to the community in order to use that and test in the community and see, the situation there. And the doctors, the local doctors there, not only in my community, but in the area, they said that they would like to use those tests for them first. They were demanding, like, they want 20 tests for doctors, and then they can help the community. And it was a fight saying that, hey, this is something we got for our community and not for you guys. You're working with the government. You should have your own, tests from the government in order to work here, and not just trying to take half of what we have gotten from our own organization. So that is something that's happening. So we say that always, the government trying to take whatever we are getting there in the community. So efforts are happening in the communities. The recognition is still, like the recognition of whatever we are doing in the community. That's something as usual. And I think we need to work on that as well from our side, from community side. So in the context of organization, so where we are watching that, and we are seeing how we can empower that process happening just now in the community, and not just leaving, away the government with their responsibilities, but also calling the government to do something else there in the community.
And Johnson, let's talk a little bit about diplomacy, because UNFCCC do a lot of diplomacy in there. In the UN in general, we see groups and alliances gain importance in many venues. We've seen it under climate change. We see it at the General Assembly, human rights, everywhere else. Your thoughts on best ways that these peoples can influence them? Well,
let's start with the problems. I don't know if this is positive or it's a problem, but indigenous peoples, usually we focus in a couple things only. I remember, being since 2000 there, I know how we've been working on that. When Red Plus started, everybody wanted to focus on Red Plus. Then they forgot the rest of the negotiations. Everybody was there. And even we created, working groups within our international forum, but everybody was just focused on Red Plus. And now we are focusing mostly Article 1, paragraph 135, the traditional knowledge, the platform, but then again, we are forgetting the rest of the activities. What I've seen is, for instance, as the NDC is one of the key issues of the Paris Agreement, I've seen that NGOs and governments, they have created the NDC alliance. And I don't see that we are participating there. They are working on capacity building for the governments. They're working on designing policy for the governments. We are not there. So I asked them how we can get there. They say, well, you guys are welcome. You are invited to come, but we are not part of that because we are focused on those specific topics. And the key themes of the Paris Agreement is the NDCs. And I think that means that when we go, even the participation is fantastic. Sometimes we get like 100 people, 100 indigenous leaders in the negotiations. But I think we need still to create capacities in our leaders in order to focus on those different topics to influence in the negotiations. And that is the problem. Sometimes I see two challenges there. Sometimes we go there and we with no preparation, just to focus on one specific topic, and everybody going to 2 or 3 topics. And then the other issue is the language. For instance, in Latin America, at least, we all speak Spanish, and that is difficult. Once I've seen that, the Bolivians, usually they used to take like 15, 20, or 25 members in the official delegation. But since they don't have any skills in English, they used to be always in the caucus and trying to take over the caucus, and they were proud because they took over the caucus, and they said, now we have the leadership in the caucus. But we said, we have to influence the governments, not to the caucus here. He's just to coordinate the work. So that's one of the problems I've seen from Latin America, at least. And that's why we started 9 years ago to prepare people, but still I see that we need to continue preparing our leaders in order to participate meaningfully in the negotiations. So that's, I think, we need to do in order to engage in different alliances and those important things that it's out there now.
Definitely, and I 100% support you in your thought that we should not like zoom in too much on one process, especially in a UNFCCC. I saw it personally in the platform negotiations for the local communities and the people platform. Everyone was focused on the platform negotiations, but so that's on the left, but on the right, they were talking about the Paris rulebook, which is also, if not more important than the platform. So I think I very much agree with you, what you just said about making sure that we are involved in all the processes. There's a perception out there, Johnson, by some indigenous peoples that the UNFCCC is quote unquote child's play. It is nothing compared to Geneva and or New York. What would you say to prove them wrong?
Well, you know, the climate change is a big issue. So first of all, and then indigenous peoples are the key players there because I just remember that the coming CEO for the Jeff, he was saying that we cannot make anything if we don't have indigenous people effectively participation in the negotiations. And he is committed to do that. And I believe that because we are key players there, we are living in the key ecosystems, and we can contribute a lot because we have knowledge. We are not just going there to say that just we want to hear or influence in something. We are saying that we want to contribute because we have knowledge, and with that knowledge we can perhaps help to solve the problems that we have in the world. So that's why I believe it's key, not only in the international negotiation, but also in key aspects of the country's commitment under the Paris Agreement. So I think it's that way I should go.
Any quickly, what is any process or business that you would like in these peoples in general to participate in more? Elsa talked about WHO. Anything that you think that is a blind spot? You talked about NDCs. What else is out there that any people should be more involved in?
Well, something that we are not focusing much, I believe it's something related to economic, perhaps local economy development. Since I've been working with NGOs in partnership with indigenous organizations in 2000, I remember that we had meetings where NGOs wanted to organize a protest against oil companies, mining companies, or something, but communities say that, yeah, we can. We are the first ones protesting against them. That's correct, but also we need to develop our economy because people need to do something in the community, and that is something I've seen that we are not focusing much. Not to well, first of all, in our organizations, we are the organizations, at least in my country, we are created to protect the land, to recover the land, and to get the title of our land, and that work still need to be done. But we need to have people prepared in order to support our own community members for economic development. I see in my own community, we are working with some reforestation, some productive things, but we don't have any guidance from our own organization. We are saying we have our organization, yes, we feel members of the organization, but we are not receiving any guidance. Perhaps we need to prepare something around that in our own organization in order to receive a proper advice on that. I've seen really interesting projects everywhere in the world, but we are not trying to amplify those nice experiences that we are having in communities, and that is something is missing. And I don't know how we're going to do that. So far, we've been trying to work on policies on climate change, biodiversity, and all of that. Protection is good, but we also we also eat birds, we also eat wildlife, we also eat things that it's part of the economy. So how are we gonna do that? I don't know who is working on that. I'm not sure.
Okay, Johnson, thank you so much for your words. One last question, 2 minutes out. What have we not touched upon that you're proud of, curious about, what people are thinking about? I think you've seen that we ask all the guests about this. Your takeaway, please.
Let's see. Perhaps having new people in the process. You know, I started in 2000, but I see a lot of new faces now. I'm happy, I'm proud because we are having new people, and that is, you know, work done by several organizations. You were saying Andrea is working with you guys, and also we've been working with some fellows and trying to create new leadership, to bring up, you know, to the international arena, to new leaders. That's the intention that we have. I'm happy with that. And also I'm happy that I've been focused on climate change, and sometimes I see people engage in several conventions, like the certification of biodiversity, and every forum I've seen the same people, but it's good to focus on something and advance on that, right? And that is key. I'm happy. Once a friend told me that, why you are focusing on climate change? That is not relevant. Perhaps it's something that's gonna, you know, go in 5 years and nothing is gonna happen. But I'm proud that we have advanced a lot there. Now we have language on indigenous rights, indigenous peoples in the, you know, formal documents in the climate change arena. So I'm happy with that. I'm proud of that. And I remember that once we celebrated in 2006 in Nairobi, when, you know, the first time they introduced the traditional knowledge in the whole climate change text. So we thought that was our language, you know, as indigenous peoples. But now we have the knowledge of indigenous peoples and other knowledge system under the Paris Agreement. So yeah, I'm proud of that, and happy that you know, new faces are happening in the negotiations. And the only thing perhaps I'm a little bit curious is that, you know, this connection between the international policy with the local elders, knowledge holders. And I believe the platform is key in the climate change and the climate change convention. And I'm really, really expecting to see how this platform is going to be implemented, because I see opportunities for our knowledge holders to engage and you know, influence meaningfully in the negotiations. So that is my expectation there. And I'm curious to see how we're gonna do that, because of the COVID-19, you know, those face-to-face meetings are canceled and only virtual meetings, and I don't see our elders doing, you know, virtual sessions right there from the forest.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I like your background, by the way. It gives me sweet memories about Bobonas River. It was very therapeutic to be with your people. Like I said, 7 days without internet, no phone calls, no nothing. And we're used to social media, so I learned a lot, ceremonies, and shared with them. So much important. Thank you, Johnson, for your view.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for your leadership, and we hope to advance these conversations beyond today. And so, yes.